Film treatment, Fatal Alibi. 1. State Capitol. After midnight. The final rehearsals are held at the Palace of Entertainment. Tomorrow, Saturday evening, the opening ceremony of the palace will take place. Pop music is playing. A troupe of half-naked girls are dancing on stage. Among the dancers is 18-year-old Lucia. Freddy comes to meet his friend Lucia. When he tries to enter through the service entrance, he is blocked by guards. But Freddy seizes the opportunity and sneaks in anyway. The rehearsal ends. The concert director announces that the governor of the region himself will attend tomorrow's event. The elections will take place this Sunday. The two young men go out into the street. Night. Lucy's parents are away in the gardens for the weekend, so she is happy to stay the night with Freddy. Gentle caresses, passionate confessions, subtle eroticism. 2. Early foggy morning. Suburb X of the state capital. A cargo van bearing the UPS logo pulls through the gates of an abandoned industrial estate. The driver, Kempis, is wearing UPS clothing. Next to him sits an aggressive 35-year-old type, Voles. He is lecturing the driver, "I'll call you on the 8th. Don't turn on your mobile until you're ready." Voles hands the driver a piece of paper. Here is the text. Spencer must have written it in his own hand. After a while, Voles gets out of the van and walks away. Soon he unlocks the door of a fancy house. In the kitchen he pours tea. A plump 50-year-old man enters wearing a dressing gown, sleeping off a nap. He asks, "How are things?" Voles replies, "I'm doing everything I can to make the election a success for my brother Robert." Robert pats Voles on the shoulder. The election needs an SUV. Robert loses the car keys and sneaks into the bedroom. The governor takes off his robe and lies down between two naked girls. Voles gets into a luxury GMC. The garage door opens automatically. 3. The UPS van is heading towards the big city. Here's a fairly long bridge over a river. The right side of the bridge is closed for repairs, so traffic goes on the left side. The streets of a big city are deserted. The van pulls into a street lined with modest cottages. A parcel in a van, a packed box, and a folder with postal forms. 4. House in the suburbs, across the river. A 60-year-old man is watching the news on TV. The discussion is about the upcoming gubernatorial election. According to the polls, the incumbent Governor Mackenzie is well behind his main rival Spencer. The phone rings. A man picks up the receiver. "Yes, Hevidus is listening." A woman announces that she will not come to work today because her little daughter is ill. A minute later, Hewitt dials a number on his mobile phone. Freddy and his girlfriend are woken by a phone call. "I thought it was my father," says Freddy. A father asks his son to help him in a shop. Freddy asks, "Okay, I'll show up around 11. Freddy decides to get some sleep. He sets the alarm for 9. 5. The driver of the van pulls up outside one of the cottages. He puts a silenced pistol under his jacket, takes 2 pairs of handcuffs and a roll of duct tape. He puts on a UPS cap, takes the parcel, and gets out. He rings the doorbell of the cottage. A dog is barking. A man in pajamas comes down from the 2nd floor. He sees a UPS van. Suspecting nothing wrong, he opens the door. The driver checks. "The Spencers live here?" "Yes, come in." After letting the UPS courier in, Spencer asks, "Shall I sign?" Kemps politely replies that the parcel is addressed to Mrs. Spencer and that her signature is required. Spencer's wife Mari soon comes down the stairs, but as the woman signs, Kemps grabs her by the hair and puts his hand over her mouth. At gunpoint, he tosses Spencer a blank sheet of paper. He tells her to write the text provided, letter by letter. The dog starts barking again, and the intruder shoots it. To avoid serious consequences, Spencer is forced to write, "I refuse to run for governor. I am going away with my family for a rest. Please forgive me and do not condemn me, Spencer." Handcuffs are used to bind the hands of both spouses, and a patch is applied to their mouths. Residents of the neighboring cottage put things in the car. Looking at his watch, Kemps has a fit. "Bastards, I can't turn on my mobile through you." Number 6. Suburbs. Freddy's father Hewitt arrives at the shop and unlocks the door. The clock says 8:40. The man goes inside and locks the door. A sign hangs on the wall saying, "Closed." Meanwhile, someone is watching Havita. 7. Voles looks nervously at the clock. It's 8:45. He calls the van driver from a payphone. The answering machine says, "The subscriber is out of range." "Well, you're an imposter," says Voles. 8. Finally, the cottage neighbors leave. The intruder climbs to the second floor and wakes up the Spencers' son, Simon. The 5-year-old is a bit scared, but Kemps plays the good uncle, says he is a terrorist, and playfully shows a silenced pistol. The boy takes it as a game. He jumps out of bed and, picking up a toy gun, declares, "And I will be a terrorist." Running downstairs to his parents, the boy calls out, "We are terrorists. You are under arrest." The Spencers are silent. Their son sees only innocent play here. However, when the boy saw the dog lying in the blood, he was a bit puzzled. Kemps pretends, "What a pity, the enemy killed one of ours." With no more obstacles, the driver decides to signal to Voles by turning on his mobile phone. 9. Alarm sounds. Freddy slips out of bed. "And I could help in the shop?" asks Lucy. Freddy agrees. They both get out of bed. 9 a.m. Hewitt unlocks the shop. Inside, he flips over the open sign. You can see the back of an unknown man walking towards the shop. At the door, he puts a black knitted mask over his face. The stranger sees the image through the slits of his eyes, how he enters the shop, how he locks the door from the inside, how he turns the sign to closed. The shop owner is nowhere in sight. The stranger deliberately trips over the goods and they fall to the floor. It turns out to be Hewitt. The client stands turned away. Hewitt asks, "What do you want?" The masked man turns around. Freddy's father is confused. "I have no money. Leave me alone." The stranger retorts sarcastically, "Merchant, I don't need your money. Don't you remember me?" Hewitt recognizes him. "Is that you, scoundrel?" The stranger brazenly, "I owe you 7 whole years." "Let's forget old grudges," replies Hewitt. "Forget the 2 months of lying around with an injured leg." With those words, the masked man stabs Hewitt in the stomach with a knife. He coughs, "I have repaid the debt to the traitor." Hewitt falls down, the blood flows. The masked man glances at the surveillance camera, makes an obscene sign with his middle finger. After wiping the bloody blade on a napkin, he slips the knife into a sheath attached at the back of his head. After unlocking the door, he looks around. There is not a single person in sight. The table marked closed remains unchanged. 11. Voles dials a number in a payphone booth. When he hears Kemps's mobile signal, he blurts out, "Are you all right? You bastard, I would have had you thrown out." Hastily getting into his brother's GMC, Voles drives off. Soon after, the SUV rolls on the left side of the same bridge under repair towards X. 12. Customers crowd around the shop. Strange, it's already 9:15, but the closed sign is still there. Someone calls out, "Look, he's lying down." Hewitt is still alive, but his condition is serious. He is soon taken away by ambulance. The militia arrives. There are no witnesses to the incident. 13. Voles arrives at X. He parks the SUV outside the door of the gardener's bakery. He ignores the no stopping sign. He enters the bakery and smells the delicious aromas, while Gardner, the owner of the bakery, welcomes the customer's GMC. "Is it okay if the car is parked here, under the sign?" Gardner, "Let's hope so." Voles whips up a couple of buns. On his way out, he throws the car keys to Garner. "You will. If anything gets stuck, say it's the governor's Jeep." 14. Freddy and Lucy leave the dormitory. At the bus stop, they look at the timetable. "Wait another half an hour," says Freddy. "Let's go to a snack bar. The owner is an old friend of my parents," Lucy suggests. When Freddy sees a GMC parked, he circles it in circles. At the bakery, Lucy tells Garner that she will be attending the opening of the Fun Palace. 15. Police officers review the store's CCTV footage. Comment, "Insolent scoundrel." After inspecting Hewitt's mobile, the officer says, "There was a recent phone call to someone called Freddy." The policeman decides to check the subscriber. A mobile phone rings while the lovers are eating. Freddy says, "Father again. He's afraid I've fallen asleep." But when he answers the phone, he suddenly hears the police. He claims to be the son. The police report that Freddy's father has been taken to hospital with serious injuries. Freddy no longer swallows a bite. He doesn't know what to grab. Freddy walks up to the counter to pay for his meal. His eyes flick to the GMC keys and the alarm panel. There is no one around, so Freddy takes the keys and dives out the door with Lucy. He starts the SUV's engine and takes off at full speed. Gardner grabs his head. 16. Voles walks back to the cottages. UPS van on site. Voles gets behind the wheel, reverses the van into the door of the cottage. Kemps orders the Spencer family to get into the cargo compartment of the van. The van speeds down the street. 17. Freddy is in a hurry. Lucy worries. What will happen to the car? Freddy reassures her. He knows you. Will explain somehow. But suddenly, a tire blows out on a bridge. Freddy is forced to stop the GMC in the middle of the bridge. He takes a jack to change the wheel. Modern machinery refuses to obey. There is no help. It's Saturday. There are no bridge repairmen in sight. 18. Neighbor's bucket is heading towards the Spencer's cottage. No one answers the door. The little girl says, puzzled, "GB, why aren't you lying?" The door opens when the handle is turned. She sees the puppy lying in a pool of blood and screams. A father runs to the next cottage after hearing his little girl screaming. The neighbor's house is unlocked and there is no one inside. The little girl is frightened. The suspicious neighbor calls the police. He says he saw a UPS van parked outside Spencer's door for a long time. The police duty officer quickly reports a possible crime. A patrol crew soon responds. "I see that UPS, let's go." When Voles sees the climbs coming up, he presses the accelerator. 19. Begins to molt. Freddy can't get the spare wheel on. When he hears the police sirens, he gets lost. He's probably catching the kidnapper of this SUV. He crosses with Lucy to the left side of the bridge, which is under repair. He carefully climbs down the scaffolding. Lucy is afraid of heights. Meanwhile, the GMC remains on the bridge. 20. The UPS van is heading towards the bridge. 2 police crews are now chasing the fugitives. As Voles pulls onto the bridge, he sees a car in the right-hand lane and a tanker truck approaching from ahead. Voles thinks that this is the only way to escape from the police. The key is to be able to overtake the parked car just before the nose of the lorry. But Voles even bursts out laughing only at the last moment when he sees that the car on the bridge is his brother's GMC. Voles gets lost, and the van is crushed. The van miraculously escapes after almost hitting the SUV. Meanwhile, the frightened driver of the lorry presses the brakes hard to avoid a collision. Fortunately, the van manages to get past, but the tanker becomes uncontrollable on the slippery surface. It starts to slide across the road. Seconds later, a container of flammable liquid hits the GMC SUV. A large explosion occurs. The burning tanker and the destroyed GMC fall off the bridge, breaking through the guardrail. So the van pulls away and the road is blocked for police cars. The officers are distraught, but Freddy and Lucy are forced to jump off the scaffolding into the river after hearing the explosion. They both watch in horror as a burning tanker falls into the water on the other side of the bridge. To avoid the danger, they both dive in. Flammable liquid spillage. It looks like a river on fire. Freddy and Lucy try to get to the surface and breathe air, but there are flames over their heads. With nothing to breathe, the young men try to save themselves by diving underwater as far away from the fire as possible. Once smothered, they both escape to where the fire can no longer reach. They are extremely happy to have escaped. In the chaos, nobody notices Freddy and Lucy. 22. A UPS van rolls in through the same gate of a manufacturing plant. The abductees are disembarked. A metal lid is opened in the concrete floor. Spencers are forced to climb down the steps. The lid is closed and the latch is fired. The driver peels off the stickers with the UPS symbol and puts on other numbers. The thugs drive out of the area. 23. Freddy and Lucy are stressed, soaking wet but happy to be alive. Freddy rushes to use the old ferry, where his uncle Woody still works. With the bridge closed, they have to negotiate a 50-kilometer meander, so the number of customers at the ferry increases. The young people take a lift to the ferryman as passengers. Woody is happy that the ferry is needed again. Freddy tells his uncle in detail about the incident on the bridge. Woody offers Freddy the use of his old Ford. Lucy's car leaves for home. While Freddy waits in line in the Ford, the ferry is still being prepared for its departure. 24. A limousine pulls into the yard. Once inside, Mackenzie tells the driver to rush to headquarters. When the limousine pulls up to the van, Voles gets in with his brother. The two discuss the accident on the bridge. It is likely that the thief was killed. Immediately, they both cheer up. Only the theft of the GMC did not stop the Spencer kidnapping. This means that Voles will have a good alibi. He was driving his brother's GMC with the deceased and was lucky to survive. But 25, the ferry finally reaches the opposite bank of the river. Freddy steers forward off the deck. A fancy limousine on the opposite side of the road honks its horn. Other vehicles must pass. Freddy notices that the limousine is pulling up to the ferry without a queue, and that Uncle Woody, who has driven a couple of cars off the ferry, is still making excuses to the limousine driver. Freddy asks people, "Whose limousine is that?" "This is our Governor Mackenzie," he replies. Freddy walks towards a suburban hospital. 26. A limousine driver asks the ferryman what he has heard about the accident. Woody tells everything he knows about the curious adventure of his nephew and his girlfriend. The Mackenzie brothers are unhappy. Events have taken a turn for the worse, and they may not have an alibi. Voles concludes, the only way out is to find the two thieves and... The governor smiles understandingly when the voter makes a strangle sign. The limousine moves to the other shore. Voles decides to stage a play. He jumps out of the limousine near the bridge and dives into the river with his clothes on. Stopping near a bridge, Mackenzie asks the police about the circumstances of the car crash. The officer reports, so far only one person has been found dead, the driver of the truck, while divers are still searching for the GMC. The governor grabs his heart. Damn, it's my car. I lent it to my brother? Is he dead? When Freddy arrives at the hospital, the doctor gives him the tragic news that his father has died, having never regained consciousness after surgery. Slightly reeling from the blow of fate, Freddy goes to the police. However, after reviewing the CCTV footage, he does not recognize the masked attacker. The police's reasoning is that since nothing was stolen from the shop, it looks like revenge. But who and what could Hewitt be avenging? Freddy does not find the answer. 28. Away from the eyes of the people, Voles gets out of the water. With mud on his face, he presents himself to the officials investigating the accident. This alibi is irrefutable. The governor commiserates with his brother, as he had already accepted his death. He summons the heads of the law enforcement agencies to the administrative headquarters. At the meeting, the governor was concerned about the disappearance of the Spencer family, especially as this candidate seemed to have a fighting chance in the elections. Meanwhile, a witness comes to the police and claims to have identified the driver of the UPS van as Mackenzie's brother. But the governor uses an ironclad alibi. He counters that this is pure slander, a pre-election duck by the opposition forces to deal with him as the most realistic winner. The leaders of the law enforcement structures unanimously stand behind the governor. It cannot be otherwise. This witness's statements are either provocation or slander. 29. Back at his parents' apartment, Freddy looks through stacks of documents and newspaper clippings describing the attack on his parents 7 years ago. That time, a racketeer beat his father and mother, the owners of the shop, with a baseball bat and robbed them of a large sum of money. Freddy's mother died shortly afterwards, never having recovered from a brain hemorrhage. Although the father managed to shoot the attacker in the leg, the bandit managed to get away. The racketeer was later caught and sentenced to prison on the basis of an anonymous tip. However, after 6 months in prison, he was killed. Who and what could have avenged his father? It didn't get any clearer for Freddy. 30. Voles goes to the owner of the bakery. He attacks him and reproaches him for giving the GMC to the milkman. Good thing he noticed the theft in time. He takes the car back and the thieves flee. The owner of the bakery explains that the keys were taken by a young man who was having breakfast with the daughter of the famous Professor Kramer. The professor lives nearby. It turns out to be the same street where the Spencers live. The door of the cottage is opened by Lucia. Voles introduces himself as a CSI investigating a car theft. Lucia lets Voles in. She tells him that her parents are away for the weekend, she is home alone, and in the evening she will be attending the opening of the entertainment palace. After framing the girl as an accomplice in the theft, he obtains Freddy's mobile number. But then Voles does something really cruel to the girl. He tapes Lucy's mouth with duct tape and secures her stubbornly to a chair. Under each leg of the chair, he puts teacups with their bottoms upside down. He attaches a kitchen knife to the handle of a brush with adhesive tape and places it on the floor so that the point rests directly on the girl's chin. Lucy can't make a sound, because if the chair were to slide off the cups, the knife would pierce her throat. On his way out, Voles ties the end of the rope to the leg of the chair and the other end to the inside of the door handle. The door opens outwards, so if the chair were to be pulled, Lucy would undoubtedly die. When she realizes she is in danger, she faints with fear. Voles calls Freddy. He says he is a neighbor. He tells him that something has happened to Lucy. Freddy leaves immediately to visit his girlfriend. 31. Freddy drives Uncle Ford. The bridge is now open to traffic. As a precaution, Freddy parks his car on the other side of the cottages. No one lets anyone in when the doorbell rings. Freddy picks the handle and the door is unlocked. He calls Lucy, but the house is absolutely silent. Meanwhile, Voles watches the cottage from afar. He believes the plan is right. The girl will be dead and Freddy will be blamed for her murder. When Voles sees a young man enter the house, he anonymously reports to the police that he has seen a burglar breaking into his neighbor's house. A police crew rushes out. Freddy fears that something has happened to Lucy. He slowly tries to open the door to the girl's room, but freezes when he sees Lucy through the doorway, bound, her mouth taped shut and her eyes full of terror. At that moment, the chair slides dangerously, a couple of millimeters short of fatally sliding off the coffee cups. After freeing the girl, Freddy sees a police car. Both escape through the other door. Voles watches as the officers break into the cottage and then take the rusty Ford. Voles jumps out of the way. A manhunt is underway. Taking advantage of the situation, Freddy escapes the pursuit. By the evening, he and Lucy are both staying at Freddy's parents' house. Driving across the bridge, they both recall the events of the morning. After Freddy escapes from the police, Voles and Robert discuss what to do. The governor says that the witnesses must be disposed of, otherwise his alibi will be destroyed and his political career will be ruined. Voles promises to act decisively. Evening. Just before the bakery closes, Voles drops by to see the owner of the bulk store. He seizes the opportunity to hit the shopkeeper on the head with a hard object and sets fire to the premises by pouring flammable liquid around it. Immediately afterwards, Voles goes to the ferryman. He introduces himself as the ferry operator. Meanwhile, Woody watches the TV news. He talks about a car accident that happened in the morning. The unsuspecting ferryman is annoyed that the governor's brother is being used to falsify events. Voles brazenly admits to being the governor's brother. Woody realizes the danger, but there is nowhere to retreat. After forcing the ferryman to drink half a liter of whiskey, Voles tries to find out where his nephew Freddy lives, but even after torturing Woody, he cannot get the address. 33. Freddy is distraught over his father's death. Lucy tries to comfort him. TV news reports on the mysterious disappearance of gubernatorial candidate Spencer, his wife and young son. Freddy hypothesizes that this is how Mackenzie got rid of his biggest competitor. Lucy doesn't believe it. It can't be. The governor is such a nice man. On his way to work, Freddy decides to visit his uncle. When the young men arrive, they are horrified to see the ferryman hanging from a noose, a bottle of whiskey on the table. Freddy calls the police. He then goes to the owner of the bulk store to ask for forgiveness. But when they arrive, they see the building on fire and fire crews rushing to the scene. The owner of the bakery is being taken away on a stretcher and is dead. At the Palace of Entertainment, the two agree that Freddy will meet Lucy after about 24 hours. 34. Midnight. The sky is lit up by a festive palace firework display. Opening of the entertainment palace. The celebrations are in full swing. After the music stops, the governor of the region appears on stage. Mackenzie praises the personal efforts he has made to make this palace serve the citizens of the city and invites them not to lose tomorrow's elections. Suddenly, Lucy sees a criminal talking to the governor, who has condemned her to death. The surprise knocks the girl off her feet and she nearly falls over while dancing. She immediately calls Freddy. A very worried Freddy drives his uncle's Ford through the city's deserted streets. He runs through the service entrance, ignoring security. Freddy checks out the funfair, but his girlfriend is nowhere to be found. He looks out of the window and can't believe it. Lucy is climbing into a van with a strange man. When Lucy gets into the van, she realizes she's been tricked. Freddy wasn't here. "What's the joke?" she asks unhappily. The vote sire scoffs. You'll soon be able to see if his love is real. If the knight truly loves the princess, he will ride in on horseback and free her from the dragon's jaws. Realizing his predicament, Freddy jumps to his feet. He jumps the fence and runs across the square, casually catching up with the van as it rolls along. A van speeds through the streets. Voles is behind the wheel. Passing the scene of the accident, Voles spits out the window. He throws a phrase. There is no bad thing that doesn't turn out for the best. A rule worth its weight in gold. Freddy holds on, though his hands are sore. He looks like he is about to collapse and fall to the asphalt, landing on his deathbed. The van enters an abandoned industrial building. Freddy is finally able to jump. He hides right next door. He watches from afar as two men take Lucy out of the van. When the metal lid in the floor is opened, Lucia is forced down. The lid is closed and the latch is released. 36. Lucy finds herself in a room with pipes of various caliber laid out. Priyatema. As her eyes adjust to the dim light, she sees three people huddled together, a man, a woman, and a small boy. Aren't you the Spencers? The spouses just nod their heads sadly. Lucy finds a bar of chocolate in her handbag and gives it to the boy. The boy is so hungry that he devours the treat without even saying thank you. Spencer looks at the girl with grateful eyes. Rocky didn't get to eat all day. After eating the chocolate, the boy asks, "Will the terrorists let us go? I don't want to play with terrorists anymore." 37. Voles and his brother are laughing. Let's get that fucking hero over here. He'll have a second chance to free his virgin. Cebrus dials Freddy's number. Suddenly, a phone rings under the building's vaults just outside. That's how? Our hero has arrived here. Voles bursts out laughing. The bandits immediately identify where the sound is coming from. At gunpoint, Voles tells Frederick to show himself or his girlfriend will be dead. Freddy has no other option, so there is no point in hiding. As Freddy approaches, his hand is handcuffed to a heating pipe. Voles then tells his brother to go and unscrew the sluice valve. Ceber does not comply. No, I may be a bandit, but you can't make a murderer out of me. In a fit of rage, Voles stabs his brother in the stomach with a knife. Covered in blood, he collapses in near-death agony. Voles, after wiping the bloody blade on his silver clothes, puts the knife in a sheath attached to his ankle. Without a second thought, Freddy remembers the video footage of his father's murder. Yes, it's not a mistake. He sees his father's killer. But Freddy is forced to pull himself together. Voles is scornful. See what happens to those who disobey? You're in luck, because there must be at least one viewer watching the reality show Flood. The victims of the disaster are already doomed to die. How unfortunate, there will be no one around to save them. Except for a passive bystander who will shed a tear. That's you lost heart. Freddy tries to dissuade the killer from taking such a step by appealing to his conscience, to his religious feelings, but to no avail. 38. Voles steps somewhere. Realizing his desperate situation, Freddy tries to break free. A couple of meters away, he sees a dropped metal bar, but it seems impossible to reach it. Voles uses a searchlight to descend into the room where the water level control unit is located. Smiling sarcastically, he turns off the sluice valve. The inmates panic. Water starts pouring through the bars in the floor. Spencer clears his throat. What are you up to, cattle? The water level rises rapidly as the current roars. Lucy is overwhelmed by a sense of hopelessness. Meanwhile, Freddy is trying to reach the bar with his foot. It seems to be a few centimeters short. Without sparing his handcuffed arm, he scrapes it to the bone with the edge of the cuff. But with his foot, he gets the bar closer. With all his strength, he succeeds in breaking the pipe to which the arm was chained. Once free, the handcuff rings are left hanging on the wrist. Soon, Freddy hears the echo of footsteps. He hides in the van's cab as the floodlight approaches. He winces. The ignition keys are in the lock. 39. When Voles returns, he sees that the pipe is broken and there is no sign of Freddy. Voles pulls out his gun. At this point, Freddy starts the engine. He turns the steering wheel of the speeding van towards the killer in an attempt to knock him down. However, Voles manages to fire his pistol several times. One of the bullets injures Freddy's left arm. In pain, he lets go of the steering wheel and the van crashes into a concrete wall. Overcoming the pain, Freddy prepares to meet the enemy. Voles walks towards the van, pistol drawn. The cab door handle gives with difficulty. When the door opens, Voles sees the soles of Freddy's shoes. The guy seems to be lying shot. Voles leans on the step of the van to check his shots. This is followed by a leg kick from Freddy. Voles falls to the pavement in a high heel and loses consciousness, hitting his occipital region. Freddy's hand is bleeding. He finds a key in the bandit's pocket, unlocks the handcuffs, and uses them to handcuff the bandit to the same pipe. Voles comes to his senses. Realizing he is handcuffed, he starts to play nice, calling Freddy a compassionate gentleman and offering him as much as $100,000. But Freddy doesn't forget that his father's killer is right in front of him. He asks with a twinge, "Did you kill him for it?" Voles doesn't know what the guy is talking about. Today Voles has several murders to his name. Meanwhile, Freddy continues, "Don't pretend. Even though you were wearing a mask, I recognize you from the video." An unfortunate coincidence comes to light. The owner of the shop is Freddy's father. It's a coincidence, brother, a fatal coincidence. Freddy kneels beside Wallace, shoving a metal bar down the killer's throat. "Tell the truth, you scoundrel." Voles wheezes through a constricted throat. "I saw him this morning by chance. I couldn't help remembering an old story. He shot at me then. It's a good thing he only hit me in the leg, because he could have shot me." "So you were the racketeer?" "It goes like this. Did they put someone else in for you?" "My brother set up a drug addict. Susky threatened him, so I had to get rid of him." "You are an incorrigible murderer." Freddy tames his rage. If he stabbed the murderer, he would identify himself with him. At the time, the water in the room where 4 people are confined is almost up to the top. The air gap is gradually narrowing. Standing on the steps, the Spencers hold their baby son above their heads. Lucy desperately knocks on the lid. The unfortunates take their last breath. The water rises all the way to the lid. The boy holds on heroically, but soon he begins to suffocate. When Freddy hears a knock on the lid, he tries to undo the latch, but as the water rushes through the gaps, the knock dies. The injured arm is bleeding profusely. Freddy stomps on a metal bar and knocks the latch off. He lifts the lid and pulls the boy out of the water. The baby chokes on his breath. He is alive. Lucy emerges from the water, holding Spencer's wife's hand. After pulling both women out of the water, Freddy helps them to recover. Unfortunately, Spencer never came out. Freddy peers through the opening, but can't see anything in the murky water. Has the man drowned? Freddy dives in without waiting. When he runs out of air, he spots a man sinking to the bottom. He grabs the man by the hatch and pulls him to the surface. We manage to pump the water out of Spencer's lungs. He starts to gargle, to snore, to expectorate. He comes back to life. The governor's brother tries to evoke mercy. "I think I have a concussion. I have a heartache in my chest." "There is no heart in your chest or your brother's chest," Freddy tells him pointedly. 41. Sunday morning. Spencer's electoral headquarters is discussing how to deal with the announcement of the kidnapping of a gubernatorial candidate. At that moment, a van pulls up at the entrance to the headquarters, its front end mangled, its windscreen shot through. Spencer gets out, holding his sleeping son in the back. His wife is clinging to his arm. Spencer invites Freddy and Lucy to come in. There is applause. Late evening. There is jubilation at HQ. Spencer is leading the preliminary results by a wide margin. It looks like there will be no need for a second round of elections. Sensational news is announced on TV. The governor of the region and his brother have been arrested. An extract from a confession by Wallace Mackenzie is shown. He says he received the order to kidnap the election favorite from his brother, Roberto Mackenzie. Spencer's TV address to voters. "I am grateful to Freddy Hewitt, an ordinary but extraordinary young man, for saving my family. On behalf of my family, I am also grateful to Freddy's fiancée, Lucy. This young couple in love have shown us that the true power of love is inexhaustible. It is omnipotent, because it can save the fate of one person and the fate of all humanity. I am glad that our motherland has not forgotten to give birth to true heroes. At the same time, it is with deep sadness that I have to inform you that yesterday we lost 3 decent people, including the father of this young man. These 3 senseless victims have given us a meaningful hope that the governor's office will not be vacated by criminal elements in the future." The End. Copyright C. 2024 by Arnoldus Rosma. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the publisher, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law.